How's everything going tonight? Hopefully well. Hopefully everybody enjoyed their Passover. I'm sorry, I just got a little distracted. Celebrated biblically. The world wants us to do certain things a certain way, and so we gotta all understand that it's important to move away from the way that the world does things. That it's harder for some people than others, but if you got faith, you're going to pull through. And one of the greatest examples we can find of, somebody having faith and pulling through despite their trials and different things is with Peter. That's one of the reasons why I'm glad that I was showed the rooster last week. It showed me where I needed to start off with in this section, and also showed me something about my life as well, which I'm glad about. At times we can be fighting for the Lord, doing things for the Lord, and doing things wrong at times. Um, and at times we have to be humbled, just like Peter. And I'm glad that this is an example in the Bible that we can learn from so we don't have to make these same mistakes. But if you do happen to understand, there's a process of sifting and different things that you have to go through. And we'll see that here in Luke chapter 22 and verse 31, where we'll start off at. And it says, the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to sit that he may sift you as wheat. Understand that wheat has to go through a process of purification to take out bugs, impurities, and different things so it's edible and more easily able to process. The same thing with the life of a believer. We have to go through this sifting process to remove the things of the world, the stony things from our heart, different things that we may have experienced through our childhood, through traumas and all of that stuff. But all those things we have to have removed in order to do the things that God wants us to do, the way that he wants us to do it. And we'll see an example of that here later. It says, but I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not, and when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. So even though he was working for the Lord said, when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. So you could be operating in certain things, as I've said, and not really be where he needs you to be. And it's because of a process that you have to go through to remove the things of the world, remove the things that, are blocking you from operating in his fullness for your life. We're going to keep on reading here. And he said unto him, Lord, I am ready to go with thee, both into prison and unto death. He was trying to declare his loyalty, and Peter was loyal to the Lord. He would fight for the Lord in different things, as we will see a little bit later within this chapter. But those aren't the ways that the Lord wanted him to fight for him. And Peter being very zealous, which is nothing wrong with that. Those are some of the reasons why he made those mistakes. He didn't understand how he was supposed to do the certain things, how he was supposed to interpret his love for God. And so he later finds those things out, but I like the example of Peter's trial because it's relatable to a lot of different people. Some people expect perfection right off the back, or expect you not to do certain things, but I'm glad that there's even a disciple like Peter, because at times I'm very hard-headed and stubborn, just like this man was at a certain point. But I do have good motives and, a good heart towards people most of the time. And at times is, taken the wrong way, which is a good thing. But at times I had to recognize that I am operating, out of my flesh with certain things. I am loving the wrong way. And so those are things that we have to recognize, and something that Peter had to be humble about as well, as we can see. It says, and he said, I tell thee, Peter, the cock shall not crow this day before thou shalt thrice deny that thou knowest me. We understand that in verse 50, Peter smote the high servant's ear. That was him using the sword wrong, and that was him fighting for the Lord in the wrong way that the Lord didn't, convict him to do so. And so, we need to be careful of that as well. Um, God doesn't need you to fight for him. He fights for you. And at times we want to defend God and different things like that. Um, but there's a way to defend him, defend his people. We ain't got to fight people because they don't believe in God. Got to deal with those who don't believe and who don't have faith in him. And it's our job to strengthen those who need to be strengthened. And so, it's something to understand, especially in the times that we're in. But the next verse I'm going to start off reading is verse 54. And it says, "Then they took him and led him and brought him unto the high priest's house. And Peter followed afar off." As you can see, Peter's love for the Lord. But he was so ashamed that he allowed certain things to happen, or certain things happened on his watch that, he had followed afar off. And when they had kindled a fire in the midst of the hall, and were sat down together, Peter sat down among them. But a certain maid behind him, as he sat by the fire, earnestly looked upon him and said, "This man was also with him." And he denied him, saying, "Woman, I know him not." And after a little while, another saw him and said, "Thou art also of them." And Peter said, "Man, I am not." And about the space of 1 hour, another confidently affirmed, saying, "Of a truth, this fellow also was with him, for he is a Galilean." And Peter said, "Man, I know not what thou sayest." And immediately, while he yet spoke, the cock crew. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord, and how he had said unto him, "Before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me 3 times." And so it's just important to recognize that, Christ seen all of this before it even happened. And so Peter trying to fight for Christ and different things, he should have been listening. He should have been, getting into a state of being humble so he can be better used. But he didn't understand that because he was so zealous for the Lord and in love for the Lord, that the enemy was going to use certain things that Peter was struggling with against him to try to condemn him. And we need to understand that about our walk, that, we get not condemned. Now, certain things aren't right. You got to get things right. You got to get right with the Lord. You got to walk, according to the way that he instructs us. You got to keep his law. But how you do that is with your heart. Peter did a lot of things right, I'm sure, it's concerning the law, but at times, as we can see, his heart wasn't necessarily in the right place. Because he needed to have understanding. He needed to go through that sifting process. And thankfully, the Lord actually gave him a chance to redeem himself. We're going to actually read that in John chapter 21. See Peter get redeemed, and the Lord actually giving him a chance to redeem that moment and that he denied him. So 1 John 21 and 15. So when they had dined, Jesus said unto Simon Peter, "Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me more than these?" And he said unto him, "Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee." And he said unto him, "Feed my lambs." And he said unto him the second time, "Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me?" And he said unto him, "Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee." And he said unto him, "Feed my sheep." And he said unto him the third time, "Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me?" And Peter was grieved, because he said unto him the third time, "Lovest thou me?" And he said unto him, "Lord, thou knowest all things, and thou knowest that I love thee." And Jesus said unto him, "Feed my sheep." I wondered before if Peter recognized what was happening in this moment. It's a direct parallel to what we just read in Luke 22. And so Peter couldn't even recognize that the Lord had forgiven him for that. Or maybe he did after the fact, but even in this moment, you can tell because it grieved him. But let's continue. And it says, "Verily I say unto thee, when thou wast young, thou girdest thyself and walkest whither thou wouldest. But when thou shalt be old, thou shalt stretch forth thy hands, and another shall gird thee and carry thee whether thou wouldest not. I thank God for that. That He never gives up on the people who truly are zealous for Him, and He actually gives us chances to redeem ourselves. And so, when I look at these things, and Peter had trials after these moments. You know, he got into different disagreements with Paul and different things. He got in trouble because he was acting a certain way in front of the Jews and a certain way in front of the Gentiles, and Paul had to call him out for that. So Peter didn't necessarily live a perfect life after this, but these moments, this moment in particular, I believe, helped Peter find the grace to be able to have his testimony. And though he went through the things he went through and did the things that he did, he was able to see the love of God through these two different examples. And so some of those things I've actually experienced in my own life. As I've said, I had to go through a process of humbling at the end of last year, and I'm glad that I did. It's taught me to be a lot more patient, a lot more humble in how I think about things and even myself. And so, I'm grateful that God has showed me, as I said, the sign with the rooster and different things, which led to me speaking on this section first. And so section 2, I'm going to do that next. But I want to start off this section or this study with this section, so people can understand that the life of a believer, it doesn't look like a perfect life or a perfect walk. Every time people see a believer, and that's why it's important to live with your integrity and as right as possible. But every time people see a believer do something wrong, they immediately compare us to Jesus, which is a good thing. They're supposed to, because we're following him. But when you look at everybody that follow him, everybody made mistakes. And Peter happens to be one of the greatest examples of these flawed people. And for me and my testimony, I'm grateful for Peter. And so I'm going to leave y'all with this for the first section. I'm going to be doing what I need to do for section 2 here, which is mostly going to be reading. And I'm going to do that now. Peace.